how many holy books do you have?
So the written books are the Torah and the prophets, 24, but then many thousands that follow on from that.
And we've talked about the door. Is it hard to switch off from the world on Saturdays?
No, it's the easiest thing in the world. It really is. It's beautiful.
Yes. And what's different about each of the holy books?
They're all different. They're all different books written at different times by different people. Parts the 5 books of Moses that Moses wrote that he brought from Sinai, and then the prophets, and then other later books include the scroll of Esther, which the holiday of Purim, which I know Deanna loves, and other scrolls and the Psalms. So they're collected over a period of about 1,000 years.
Okay. So if you're like sort of almost away from the world on Shabbat, then what do you do with your family on that day?
Well, we have time in the synagogue, prayers. We also have meals together and with our friends and with community. Our family like to go for walks on Shabbos afternoon, just spend time together. The boys like to fight.
Gates said, they've got lovely Saltwell Park.
Yes.
They will...
Also, it's a time to learn. There's no distraction, so you can do. I often go for a rest on a Saturday afternoon, sleep for a couple of hours. Shabbos bluff.
Why is what's the importance of Shabbat? Why do we?
One of the interesting things is if you look at the Bereshit Genesis, none of the days of the week a name. It's on the first day, it's on the second day, it's on the third day. So it is a movement during the week towards that day, because it's a day that's going to be different from the rest of the week. And I think it's that difference that you used a lovely word and I've forgotten what it was, Rabbi. Cocoon. And I used sanctuary. And I think you need time out from the rest of the world, and that's what it's about.
Well, we're echoing God's creative process. God created for 6 days and rested on the 7th. So there's a natural rhythm in life that follows that pattern. Other societies have tried to change that. So the Russians tried a 5-day week, a 5-day week, and it just didn't take on. They couldn't make it last because 7 days was just too natural. Napoleon tried a 10-day week because he liked decimal, everything to be in tens, and it didn't work. The people just couldn't live a 10-day week. It had to be 7 days. There's something in nature, I think, that is a 7-day cycle, and it starts and ends with Shabbat.
And sorry, one of the other questions was, one of the questions, sorry, is why does food have to be kosher? Is it written somewhere that you have to have kosher food?
It's in the Torah.
So the Torah has a number of the basic dietary rules about separating milk from meat and not cooking them together, about the animals that we can eat and that we can't eat. And there's other rules of agriculture which apply that mean that we need to be sure, we need to know where food comes from. Long before fair trade, we were being encouraged to think about the fairness of trade and of food, and so it applies to lots of things. So as Deanna alluded to earlier, there are things you can buy in the regular supermarkets that will be kosher. So for example, pasta, dried pasta, is not a problem to buy even without rabbinical supervision. Some things that are more complex require then intervention. That's someone that's part of the process or knows how it's been done and knows there's no additives that might come from an animal or that's not being ritually slaughtered, that sort of thing. So there's a lot more of that than you might think in additives nowadays with more awareness about vegan food. And so that's become less of an issue because manufacturers are no longer able to use certain additives or preservatives that might have been an issue 30-40 years ago.
I mean, the other difficulty was gelatin, but now it's seaweed gelatin, which is what was in the cola sweets that Stanley had.
And cochineal, which was the red dye, which came from beef.
The red dye, yes.
Every year there is a kosher food guide printed because the constituents of the food can be changed.
And another question is around certain religions, you have to pray a number of times a day. Is that within Judaism as well?
So Jews are supposed to pray 3 times a day, but we have lots of mini prayers called blessings that we make on lots of other occasions. So every time we eat, every time we finish eating, every time we drink or finish drinking, every time we go to the bathroom, there are blessings for most occasions. So those sort of fill in the gaps during the day. We're supposed to be constantly, the same way as I talked before about the kippah, the yarmulke, making me mindful of God's presence. So the blessings are to remind us at every juncture of whatever we're doing that this is because God has allowed us to be here, or to give us this gift of whatever it happens to be. So it's a constant process through the day.
Sorry, I'm just going through this one. Another question is around, do Jewish children just go to Jewish school, or can they go to any school?
So
Well, in Newcastle, we did have a Jewish school, and then, my younger son went there.
Yeah.
But we don't have any children here. London, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, where there are bigger communities, there are Jewish schools. I didn't go to a Jewish school. I had a lovely Catholic headmaster who was wonderful. And certainly sort of my generation didn't, because they weren't there. But, and it's really up to you what you decide to do. I mean, if you want your child to go to a Jewish school, then you need to go to a town where there is a Jewish school.
Yeah. But otherwise they can go to any school.
Yeah.
They can. I would say that Judaism is so, there's so much to learn.
Yeah.
It's definitely an advantage to be in a Jewish school learning from an early age. But there are, for whatever reason, people that don't manage that.
Another question would be, because in this day and age, and we're aware of many religions that are facing young people who are questioning their faith, do you find that people question their faith in Judaism? Do you find?
We're always asking questions.
I'm just thinking about young people. I'm thinking more around young people who sort of, I'm just thinking about, say, the Hindu faith, where you don't have the same attendance at sort of, as you used to. Do you find that that within sort of Judaism it's the same, in that young people move away and this, that and the other, and their way of living changes?
It seems there's movement backwards and forwards, I think.
I think you're right.
It goes both ways. And questioning is not a problem. And Judaism is a religion of action. Faith is part of it, but it's not even the main part, I would say. There's things we have to do. There are also things we have to believe, but really it's much more nuanced. And if we're doing the right things, then we've got most of the pieces in play, as it were. So even younger people that question, they don't understand or haven't developed their faith to the point that they're satisfied with it. There's still things that they ought to be doing in terms of prayer, in terms of observing the rules and the laws. That doesn't change. So.
And somebody is one of the schools, I think it's Copeland, who'd asked about children, can they just wear jeans, t-shirts, etc., just like everyone else, or do they have to just so just like everyone else?
In certain sects that they tend not to, they tend to be more modestly dressed, even the children.
And you've mentioned, really, because I was going to ask, how do you find that you have a large number of people, but then attending the prayers, etc. But then really it depends on how much community there is in that area, doesn't it? Where you've got a large community, you get a large everybody.
I mean, I think considering the makeup of our community, if you think about Yom Kippur, we had 80 people in the synagogue. We only have 160 members, so that means there weren't that many guests. So almost half of our community were able to come, and many of the others, elderly and infirm, unable to get there on Yom Kippur. So I think we do well. But it's not just about the synagogue. That's the point. It's about the home. It's about Judaism is life. It's not just any one particular part of it. So.
And when you have prayers and at the synagogue, then is it from is it particular books that you read the prayers from, or there's certain? prayers
So-
that
Yeah, so we have the prayer book, which is the Siddur, and most of the prayers are organised in there. There's also an opportunity if you want to formulate your own thoughts in the middle of the silent prayer. There's a point where it says if you want to add your own prayers, now's the time. But generally, we follow quite a rigid text, and the reason for that is that the texts were designed to incorporate all the different things that you might want to include. And so if you're sensitive to that, you're able to, to tune in at the right moment and pick up the right.
I was going to say, we don't just pray for ourselves, it's we, isn't it, on behalf of the rest of the community, not
And the
our
world
name.
at times.
And the world, yeah.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
pray for all the nations of the world.
Yeah. To end with, really, what I would like to ask is, what do you think is unique about the Northeast? About the
Well,
community?
you've
Community,
come from the
yeah,
outside.
community.
I mean,
I've lived here all of
I'm
life,
born
so
and bred, but for my parents, this was a haven. You know.
yes, when your parents
Yes,
didn't.
you know, escaping from Berlin and Warsaw.
Yeah.
I mean, life wasn't particularly necessarily easy, but it was much better than.
Absolutely. I mean, my
Yes.
parents came in the 60s as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And this was where we came and settled. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's it. So we've been here all.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think it's the people. The people are
I
it's,
totally agree.
it's wonderful. I mean, I love the Northeast.
Mhm.
I love the clear skies that are far occur
The
far
cold weather.
more often. Yeah, the cold doesn't bother me. But it's the people that there's an openness and a friendliness. And you're talking about work in the community, but that's only because the wider
The
community
openness.
is open to it, and
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
we're not we're very blessed.
I think I totally agree with you. And to end, really, this is when I'm asking, or somebody has asked around the uniqueness, I think it's very much around how open the community is and how willing to work together. And I think that